Hi everyone, my name is Mason and I work for Comet Backup here in New Zealand. Welcome along. This is a new series of technical webinars that we're running. The way we're running these webinars is that a webinar will be presented every fortnight. My colleagues and I will alternate between running an introductory kind of new user introduction where we run through a live demo of getting the software set up and running a first backup job. And then on every other fortnight, we will talk about some more advanced topics and some of the current events happening in Comet. At least that's the theory, but as you may be aware, sometimes plans have to change. The schedule has been adjusted a little bit owing to the new year, staff availability, some things like that. So last time I was giving one of these presentations was back in November on the 27th, so late last year. I ran a webinar that briefly covered these topics, which was so new features in October and November. I was just discussing some new features in Comet that were released in the Voyager series during that time frame leading up to the 1911 Juno release. So just to recap, just recapping from my previous webinar, that was the ability to search for file names in your past backup jobs and several other features that I didn't put in pictures for. Impersonation for Windows user accounts and SQL Server backup jobs, searching job property fields, sending test emails from the Comet Server Setup Wizard, and the ability to copy and paste policies in the Comet Server web interface. And of course, we've got a lot of other features being developed in Comet. We've got a growing team of development staff, and we are constantly shipping new features. So that was one discussion topic. Another thing I talked about was two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is obviously a really important security feature that you can enable for your administrator accounts in Comet Server. And I sort of went on a bit of a tangent about web security in general. And then giveaway. Last time we gave away a $100 Amazon.com shopping voucher. So congratulations to the winner. And thank you all for coming along and sharing in a great year with us. There's no giveaway today, so hopefully you find, my talk interesting enough without that little bit extra. So maybe towards the end of the year we might run another promotion. So that was last time, just summarising my previous webinar. And if you missed it, do keep an eye on our YouTube channel. A lot of this video content will get split into bite-sized pieces and put online on our YouTube channel so that you can watch it again later. This time for today, I've got a few topics lined up. First of all, just a quick announcement about our latest software version that we just released last week, and then recent changes December, January, February. Because of the schedule changes in the new year, we've got a bit to catch up on. There's a lot of changes in Comet that I'd like to cover, and I get to go into a little bit more detail in these webinars compared to just what goes into the Voyager changelogs every week. And then Q&A, taking some questions if you have any. So the webinar platform that we're using has a question widget on the side. And so if you can pop your questions in, and I'll be able to answer them at the end of the presentation. And normally we would actually cover a few more topics than this, but there's just quite a lot of new material to catch up on. And so I think this will take up all the time we have today. We are aiming for half an hour only presentation. Everyone watching this is a busy person, MSPs, IT people, always busy, and so I won't take up too much of your time, just 30 minutes, including questions, and we'll see how we go with that. This is it's all new webinar series, new material, new slides. My timing is still a work in progress, but I've given a few of these now, and I think I'm getting closer and closer to hitting the target every time. So I've got a rough idea of how long it's going to take. Hopefully we can stick to that 30 minutes. Let's move on to the first major topic without any further ado. I'm pleased to announce our latest major release, Comet 20.2 Iris. So we released this last week on the 26th, and it's available now for you to download from cometbackup.com for your Comet Enterprise service. And just to summarize, you probably know this already, but we have two release tracks for Comet. Our everyday weekly development lands in Voyager, and then once every 3 months, we take a snapshot of Voyager and settle on it with long-term support. So it's great if you don't want to upgrade Comet every single week, just do it quarterly for the major releases, and you'll still be able to get support, bug fixes, and so on. So it's been about 3 months since the last one, 1911 Juno, back in November last year, and now it's time for us to do this again, snapshot up all the changes from the last 3 months and make a new long-term support release for you all. And if you look back through the Voyager changes compared to the last 3 months ago, it does depend on how you count things exactly. But from the changelogs, we can see there's been 9 new features and 20 new enhancements all over the product, new things for the desktop app, for the web interface, and also improved performance in some particular situations. These numbers are actually a little bit lower than we normally achieve in a quarter, but that's partly just to do with the new year, the holiday season, and staff availability. So A nice small upgrade with still with some really nice new features. And if you've been using the previous quarter's release, this is your chance to catch up on 3 months worth of new features. So the code name for this release is Iris. Our product is named after a space theme, if you haven't noticed. The code names that we use, Voyager, so obviously Voyager 1 and 2, the famous spacecraft from NASA that flew past some planets and now traveling further and further outward in the solar system. And Comet sort of stops at every planet along the way. We started out with Mercury, Comet 17 point something Mercury, and in the solar system, closest to the sun. And we've been moving slowly outward. We had Comet Venus, and then Earth and Moon, Gaia and Luna, Mars, the Phobos and Deimos. You get the ideas. And so that's sort of the metaphor, that Voyager expands outward throughout the solar system, and then every 3 months we stop at a new solar system object along the way. And so right now we're in the big asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and there's heaps of asteroids here, so probably we'll keep using asteroid names for a while. Iris is the name of an asteroid. You can call it, technically you might call it 7 Iris. The 7 is like a historical thing about the order in which the asteroids were discovered back in the 1800s. Iris is pretty far down the list of asteroids. It's the 17th by mass, but because of the type of rock it's made of and the position reflection, it's really bright from Earth. It's the 4th brightest in the whole asteroid belt, despite its smaller size. And after all these asteroids, the next sort of thing that we're going to land upon is Jupiter. And the first thing anyone knows about Jupiter is that it's big. It's a really big planet in comparison. So we're trying to save that Jupiter code name for some really big features that we're planning. And hopefully we can announce something more about that very soon as we enter the second half of this year. So that's 20.2 Iris. It's out now. Please try it out and raise a support ticket if you have any feedback about the new version. So moving right along, let's talk about some of the features that's in this release. So I said there were 9 new features and 20 enhancements, and I just want to talk about some of them in a little bit more detail, give some background information, some extra depth. I've picked out 5 that are new this quarter. They're all new from the last 3 months since 1911. They're all available in 20.2 Iris. Of these 5 features, 3 came from our feature voting system. So feature voting is one of the community participation things we do here at Comet. If you're signed up to Comet, you can go along to the feature voting page and post new requests or upvote existing ones. Talk to our other Comet partners about these features. We do listen. We read every single comment. We can't develop everything immediately, but the total votes are really helpful for our planning and to guide our prioritization. So, if you have something about Comet that you think we can add or improve, then please check out the feature voting page and make your voice heard. So let's dive straight into these 5 features that I want to run through today. First up is periodic schedules. So this did come to us through the feature voting system. So big, thank you to everyone who upvoted this feature and commented. You did help make this happen. So this is a new schedule type, and this is what it looks like in the desktop app and in the web app. So Comet already supports lots of different schedule types. Setting the backup job to run hourly, daily, weekly, monthly. But sometimes those options aren't enough. Right now, if you needed to run a backup every 4 hours, that wasn't specifically that easy to do. You would have to create 6 different daily schedules and sort of manually patch them all together. But now it's really easy. One option, say you want to run the job every 4 hours or every 45 minutes in this picture, hit save and you're done. There's one extra field here for how much you want to offset the runtime. By default, this feature runs backup jobs every hour on the hour, at the O clock. But if you're setting this up for a lot of customers, you want to spread each customer across that time period so that you don't have all your customer backups running at once. Just a little feature for sort of controlling your performance spikes. If you're seeing load spikes, then maybe this option can help you. And it's not necessarily obvious what it does, so we added live preview of when the schedule will run next. You can see this just at the bottom of the dialog box, and this is really live. So as you change the settings, as you change the schedule settings, it'll immediately figure out what would be the next runtime and display it live at this bottom of the window. It just makes it a bit more intuitive, simpler to use the system, and this is available. The live preview is for all schedule types, not just the new periodic type. And the other change we made in this area was we streamlined the layout a little bit. In the past, this dialog box used to look very busy. It showed a lot of fields all at once, and it was sort of, graying out the fields that weren't being used. And we decided that hiding them was simpler and it makes this dialog more focused. So overall, lot of nice new improvements for the schedule system. And if you're coming from competitor products, then Comet can import periodic schedule settings from some other products too. Something else that's new is macOS notarization support. There's been a lot of changes in macOS recently. The latest version of macOS 10.15 Catalina that's made some pretty major changes to the way security works on Macs. Macs are getting a much tighter permission model that's inspired by the mobile way of doing things. That's a really interesting direction to take for the future of computing in general. We're obviously watching it very closely, but in terms of the practical day-to-day impact, bit of background information for you. Windows users are familiar with the kind of pop-up from UAC and Smarts. Do you want to run this application? You click next or run anyway. And what you're meant to do is, as an app developer, you can make this stuff go away if you buy the right Authenticode certificate and let the reputation accumulate. There's a certain situation here. The Comet Backup client installer that comes out of your Comet server is modified, it's custom branded. You're responsible for distributing that client installer to customers. Because the installer is customizable, there's certain limitations around what security features we can control and what we have to leave up to you. With the way things are currently designed, we're not able to do the code signing for you because you can make arbitrary modifications to the installer. And we designed this in this way because this means we don't have to host a central branding server that might go down. In Comet, all the branding and software generation is done by your own Comet server. So you're in full control of the uptime, the network topology, staying behind the firewall, things like that. So on the smart screen, most people just click run anyway. What you might not know, if you're mostly a Windows user, is that compared to Windows, on macOS Gatekeeper, there's no run anyway button. In this screenshot, I've just double-clicked the Comet installer and it doesn't run. And there's no run anyway button. That little help button there doesn't do it. Your options are to either disable security system-wide, or you have to know the secret trick, which is to right-click and open the app. So for the record, you can work around this. You know the trick. Macs are pretty hard to use. You just have to let your customers know to right-click the app and choose Open to install. It works. It's not a great experience for the customer, and overall this is a really useful security feature. You don't want to be responsible for teaching customers to reduce their own security. So ideally, your better option is to buy into the Apple ecosystem a little bit. So Comet has supported macOS code signing for Gatekeeper for a while now, or at least we had documented some command line steps to do it. There's a few hurdles to get over. You need to own a real Mac machine. You can't do this from Windows. You've got to pay Apple to buy a developer certificate, go through the settings. With the latest changes in macOS 10.15 Catalina, the rules are getting stricter. In particular, the new notary system. This is a major evolution for Gatekeeper, just to check that Apple is in a hash of your app. Comet 19.12.4 added support for a new notarization system. We've continued to improve the compatibility with each point release, and with 20.2 Iris, I think we're in a good place. We've had multiple partners successfully achieve automatic notarization of their Comet installers. In particular, it's no longer feasible for us to just document how to do this yourself. The code signing steps have gotten a lot more complicated than they used to be. And they need to happen earlier while Comet is still halfway through assembling your branded installer. So you do need a real Mac to run this stuff on. The code signing tools are only available on Mac, and the Comet server only runs on Windows and Linux. And that puts us on a bit of a predicament. We could either be the first company in the world to reinvent a lot of wheels, or the more practical option we came up with was to let you put in your SSH credentials for your Mac. And so the Comet server will remote in, do its branding and code signing, pull the pieces back to Comet server, and assemble the final package. And so a lot of stuff happens internally, pieces going back and forth over SSH. But once you've got it set up, it's completely smooth and seamless from the customer's perspective. From your perspective, this is what the settings look like. Really quick, top to bottom, level. So level is, if you're going to use the old signing system, that's pretty fast, has lower requirements but lower compatibility. Or you can choose sign, notarize, and staple. That's the highest level of security needed for the latest version of macOS. But there's some trade-off points in between. You can notarize but skip the stapling, and it will be generated faster, but only work if the customer's still got an internet connection, things like that. Certificate name. So once you've paid up for your Apple developer membership, you can use their tools to create the 2 necessary certificates. SSH, that's your SSH settings, supports password or private key. So that you can make sure the connection to your Mac is secure, and that's really important because SSH, if it's on the public internet, you're going to get a constant level of background attacks. So make sure that it's got a good, strong, randomly generated password or private key. Apple ID, this is needed for notarizing, and in fact, Apple will send you an email to this address every time code signing goes through, and app specific, that's related to the Apple ID again. If you need to set this whole thing up, have a read of the documentation on our website, go through the steps. It's a bit tedious, but once you've got it working, the customer will just get a much better experience. I've talked about this for a little while. There's one more point I need to make. We needed to make a lot of changes to support this. In particular, for the first time, we are raising Comet system requirements. We used to allow macOS 10.9, and now we require 10.10. And that's not something we do lightly, but we did evaluate this, and it turns out very few people were still using 10.9. You can upgrade to 10.10 for free. It has the same hardware requirements, so if your Mac can run 10.9, it can run 10.10. Also, 10.9 has been long out of security support. Did you know Apple only usually supports like the last 3 versions of macOS? The support lifetime for macOS is very short. And in the future, we're going to take a much more evidence-based view of what OS versions we support based on our customer statistics. Overall, in this case, raising the system requirements was something that was a low-risk decision, and it was the most feasible path forward towards adding support for the new notarization features. And on the off chance, on the incredibly unlikely chance you still have a significant customer base stuck on 10.9, you can just keep using old versions of Comet. We do let you download old versions of Comet from our website, and old client versions can connect to new server versions of Comet Server, so you can still keep your Comet Server up to date. So that was macOS notarization. On the subject of system requirements, just a side note, Mac isn't the only operating system making big changes this year. Who remembers this one? Windows 7. Of course, everyone remembers it. You probably still have customers using it. But from now on, I have to talk about it in the past tense because as of this January 14th, just a few weeks ago, Windows 7 and the corresponding Server 2008 R2 and the older Server 2008 original version are no longer receiving free Windows updates from Microsoft. And I have my standard take on this is a system without security patches is unsafe to connect to the internet. So if you're in this situation, you need a solution for these customers ASAP. If you're still running these old Windows operating systems, you basically need to have already completed your migration by now, or you need to be paying for ESUs. So extended security updates. So this is Microsoft's answer for people who can't quite schedule the upgrades just yet, but it doesn't come for free anymore, and it's really not something you want to rely on. These old versions of Windows are missing, some fundamental security changes. Windows 10 under the hood that weren't really backported, and the ESUs are quite expensive. You've only got 3 years, and the price of updates doubles every year. So by the end of year 3, this is a very expensive proposition. You can purchase a volume license key, either MAK, KMS, via your Microsoft CSP if you have a CSP relationship, or you can lift and shift these servers to Azure VMs, and then the old versions of Windows get the extended updates for free if they're on Azure. So that's a bit of a tie-in there from Microsoft. What does it mean for us? It's still going to work, but it's getting a bit tenuous, and there are going to be new caveats. So for Windows Server 2008, the original one, we will support it for a little bit longer. For Windows 7 and Server 2008 R2, from a security perspective, unfortunately, these operating systems are still very popular. So Comet will maintain support for a lot longer, of course, but just with a growing list of caveats. We will provide more information in the future, but for now, the first concrete practical change is that we're going to start requiring some certain specific Windows updates for everything to keep working. Our general position here, the rule of thumb, is that we are happy to support anything Microsoft supports, at least. But Microsoft will only support you if you're getting the ESUs. And in order for your machine to actually get the ESUs are delivered over TLS 1.2 exclusively. So in order to get them, you need the KB update that adds TLS 1.2 support. So you need to get current with all your Windows updates. And that's really interesting for us because we had a lot of questions in the past about TLS 1.2. In particular in relation to its compliance with PCI DSS regulations. PCI is obviously a payment regulation, and Comet isn't a payment system, but it is still security adjacent. And so we do get questions about it, and rightly so. In order to keep supporting these old versions of Windows, we've been allowing these old versions of TLS, and that's something that PCI wants to prevent. So we've got some questions about that. But if all the valid 2008 users have to get mandatory TLS 1.2 to get the ESUs, then we're jumping on that too. So that's a requirement now. The other change is that Microsoft only supports the latest available IE for each OS. IE 11 used to be exclusive to Windows 8.1, but I guess that wasn't a very impressive draw card. So it was added back to Windows 7 into R2. And since IE 11 was made available for these operating systems, that means there's no real Windows versions left that need older versions of IE. And so the Comet web interface is going to start relying on this stuff. So we've raised our web interface minimum version to IE 11. Obviously, getting a real web browser is better, Firefox or Chrome, or there's a lot of new Chrome derivatives in the market these days. But I would expect the clock to be counting down on being able to actually get Firefox and Chrome for these operating systems as well. It's a matter of time before that support gets dropped too. The original Server 2008, the Vista one, is actually in a really bad state here. Both Firefox and Chrome have dropped support for it already. So my understanding is that there's no real actively supported secure web browser available on that platform at all. So you guys are all savvy and on top of this, and I'm sure you've got your Windows 7 customers upgraded already. So that was some important changes for both Mac compatibility and for Windows compatibility. To help you tell if you have customers affected by these changes, we're expanding how operating system version numbers are reported up to Comet. So this is in the Comet server web interface on the connected devices page. And it can detect version numbers now for all common operating systems and a lot of Linux distros too. Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS server distributions, but also desktop distributions and some NAS appliances. So that's a really cool new feature. See the detailed OS versions for your customers. Most service providers, you might have an RMM or PSA system that gives you this information already. That's probably better, but this does let you look at all your customers and see what operating systems they have. And if someone's using an end-of-life version of Windows or macOS, then maybe this is your chance to do some value-add work. Reach out to them, get them to upgrade. You're doing them a big favor, and you're making the internet safer for everyone. There really is like a herd immunity kind of concept when everyone's up to date. So that's another new feature in 20.2 Iris, the operating system details. Another cool new feature is deleting within a snapshot. So this feature also came in through the feature voting system. So another quick plug for making your voice heard on that. Delete within snapshot. So occasionally you will back up the wrong thing. A customer will have a large movie file on their desktop. It will get backed up and use up all their storage quota. For a long time now, Comet has supported deleting an entire snapshot from history. It's this first screenshot. So that's been there for a while. So at least it was possible to free up space here by deleting the whole snapshot. But that isn't always granular enough. And so with the latest versions of Comet, you're able to pick out single files or folders from the job history that you want to delete. And so to do this, you go into Restore a File, browse the files in here, and then you just right-click and delete on your selection. Little progress bar, and then the files are gone, your free space is back. Simple as that. This feature is currently only in the desktop app, but we are making progress on getting it available in the web interface. And in fact, if you look at sort of the overall progression here, the ability to delete whole snapshots, the first screenshot here, that was recently just brought forward into the web interface during this most recent quarter. So you can expect to see the individual file deletion become available remotely through the web soon in a future version of Comet. Default policy selection. So this is another small feature from the feature voting system. So Comet Server has a policy system that can control a lot of which features are available to a customer or set of customers. You can turn features on and off. And when you're creating a new account in Comet, you can select if you want to apply a policy to it. And we had some requests in the feature voting system if we could allow you to pick what the default policy is for new accounts. And so originally we started off in Voyager by having it try and automatically pick out what might be the default one with some heuristics. But leading up to the final Iris release this quarter, we changed it so that there's a checkbox here. And so now you just choose what is the default policy for new users, and then it gets automatically selected when you go to create a new account. Simple as that. So if you're always setting the same policy for new users, then I do recommend you go into this page and set it as the default. It'll make your life a little bit easier, save you 2 clicks for every new account. Just as a side note, if you've been around for a while, you might remember this new account dialog looking a little bit differently. In the past, for a while, there was a feature to add multiple user accounts all at once in bulk. That feature is still there, but now it's hidden away behind the advanced options toggle. So you can turn on the advanced options feature in Comet from the web interface in your user menu in the top right, and you get some little extra features showing up all over the interface. In particular, when you add a user, the feature that lets you add multiple customers at a time from a CSV list. So just a quick tip, if you're wondering where that feature went, or if you haven't seen it before, it's now tucked behind the advanced options. And so that was 5 features, but that isn't everything. There's much more. I've been talking today about some features that I chose that have, maybe general interest, but depending on exactly what kind of service provider you are, there's a lot of other things going on. There's a great big changelog for our new quarterly release at 20.2 Iris, and as well as that, we make a lot of small fixes all the time. So I do recommend taking a look at the changelogs. More technical, more under the hood stuff that may or may not affect you. More accurate information. For instance, we now show for your storage role, you can see the free disk space and spanned balancing information on the About the Server page. We now show expiry dates in the Vault analysis system. We now show the retry time information in the error messages. And on the recent activity page, when a device is outdated, we now say exactly how much it's outdated. So just more information coming through in the web interface and in the job reports. Fewer bad warnings and more good ones. If you've got a really busy storage vault, we've relaxed some of the lock warnings, so that's good, a bit less to worry about there. And we now warn you about some other problems that might have happened. Like if you do a backup job and it turns out there was 0 files, that's now a warning. That's generally a very good warning, but it hit a few people, so there's an option to turn that off. If you do a backup job and the vault gets smaller, that's very unusual. That's now a warning. So just if you catch some problems before they happen. If you want to learn more, there's the full changelog available on our website, the detailed release notes, and you can subscribe to get RSS or email notifications of new releases. And the release notes are also available when you go to download the software.